Sometimes the deepest wounds come not from strangers, but from the ones who once called you their whole world. It was meant to be a small gesture, a heartfelt present. My fingers, stiff and swollen from years of arthritis, had worked tirelessly for 3 weeks to create it. Each stitch, a prayer, each detail, a memory. I wrapped it in soft blue tissue paper, tied it with a ribbon I'd saved from my late husband's favorite bookstore, and drove across town to celebrate my granddaughter's birthday, unaware that this would be the night my heart broke open. The townhouse in Newport felt like a different planet. Sharp angles, clean marble floors, and a chill in the air that not even the August heat could penetrate. As I entered the lobby, the doorman didn't recognize me. "I'm here for the Carter party," I said, clutching the small package against my chest. "Name?" he asked, expression unreadable. "Margaret Delaney." He paused, squinted at the guest list, and reluctantly let me through. The elevator ride felt longer than usual. I caught my reflection in the polished steel. A woman past 70, in her best lavender blouse, lipstick trembling just slightly at the corners of her mouth. The door was open when I arrived. Laughter, music, clinking glasses, the unmistakable sound of people who'd forgotten about struggle. My son Andrew glanced up from his phone when I stepped in. "Mom's here," he said to no one in particular, as if announcing that it might rain later. Inside, the living room was a showroom of ambition. Velvet couches, gilded light fixtures, crystal flutes filled with something pale and expensive. My daughter-in-law, Bethany, floated through the crowd in a designer dress, all smiles and lipstick. I searched the sea of faces for my granddaughter, Lily. "There you are," Bethany said, giving me a quick air kiss. "Come in, Margaret. We're just about to open presents." I found a spot near the fireplace, beside a vase of lilies that smelled too sweet. My package sat in my lap, growing heavier with each passing moment. "Start with the small ones, darling," Bethany called out, raising her champagne glass. Lily's manicured fingers reached for mine, and I offered it with a smile I had rehearsed in the mirror that morning. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." She unwrapped it slowly. The room hushed. 2 small knitted dolls emerged, figures of her and her fiancé in wedding attire. I had matched the yarn to the color of her engagement dress and even included a tiny replica of her beloved French bulldog. But more than that, hidden deep inside one of them, where no careless hand would ever feel, was my mother's diamond, reset by my late husband for our 50th anniversary. Lily had admired it for years, but she didn't look beyond the surface. "This," she laughed, holding the dolls away from her white dress as if they might stain it. "This looks so cheap." Her words echoed louder than the laughter that followed. Andrew's short bark, Bethany's shrill titter. Even her fiancé smirked from the corner. My face burned as if I'd been slapped. I wanted to explain, to tell her about the diamond, about the meaning, about how love sometimes wears humble clothing. But the words caught in my throat, too fragile to survive the air in that room. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat alone in my small kitchen, the clock ticking like a metronome of regret, and stared at the email that waited on my screen. Lily's wedding contracts. My beach house, the one where I had scattered Charles's ashes, where we'd built dreams and watched them set with the sun, was listed as the venue. Renovations were scheduled. My old furniture was being cleared out. And I hadn't even been asked. It was in that moment, beneath the flickering light of the stove and the growing ache in my chest, that I realized I was no longer seen. Not as a woman, not as a mother, not as a grandmother, just as a bank account and a burden. That was the moment I changed. The next morning, the sun rose over Newport with a gentle glow, but inside me, a storm brewed. My coffee had gone cold before. I even tasted it. I sat at the kitchen table, fingers trembling, the email from Lily still open on my screen. I read the message again, my granddaughter's tone so casual, so entitled. "The designer will begin renovations next week. We've already sent the invitations. Please have the furniture removed by Friday. Please, as if it were a courtesy. As if the home I had poured decades into, the home where Charles had built the porch swing by hand, where I had taught Lily how to make lemon scones when she was only 7, was just an empty shell, a location to be edited, redesigned, and repackaged. My phone buzzed, a message from Andrew. Found a beautiful retirement community near Narragansett. We can tour it together next week, just looking into options. My heart squeezed tight. It was beginning. The quiet erasure, decisions being made for me. Under the pretense of care, control was taking root. I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled the old metal keyring from the drawer. 3 brass keys, one slightly bent from years of use, the one that opened the side door of the beach house. My hands gripped them tightly. I needed to see it again, before the walls came down, before the ghosts were painted over. The drive to Cape Shore felt longer than it had in years. My hands clutched the steering wheel, knuckles white, joints stiff, with age and anger. Every mile brought a memory. Charles humming along to the radio, Lily giggling in the back seat, Andrew chasing fireflies on the lawn. They rose like fog, clouding the road ahead. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, something felt wrong. A sleek black SUV was parked near the porch. I paused. My chest tightened. Inside, voices floated through the open window. Light, breezy, entitled. "The wall between the kitchen and the dining area can definitely come down," a woman said. "Mrs. Delaney won't mind. She's barely here anymore." I stepped through the front door, and there they were, Lily, Bethany, and a woman in a crisp beige blazer, tablet in hand, standing in my kitchen, the one with the sun-faded tile where Charles had made blueberry pancakes every Saturday. They turned, startled. "Grandma?" Lily blinked. What are you doing here?" I looked around the room, my throat tight. The scent of lilies from a new vase filled the air. My eyes scanned the counters, the walls, the photograph of Charles and me, our 40th anniversary. Portrait was gone. "I should be asking you the same," I said softly. "What are you doing in my house without my knowledge?" Bethany stepped forward, her tone syrupy sweet. "Margaret, darling, we were just discussing small updates for the wedding. Nothing major, just some light adjustments to make it perfect." "Taking down a weight-bearing wall doesn't sound minor to me," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. I placed my purse gently on the counter, the way one sets down something fragile before it breaks. Lily's face softened, eyes wide with practiced empathy. "You said at Christmas that we could use the house. We just thought—" "You meant you were okay with making it ours, just for the day." "I said you could use it, Lily," I whispered, "not dismantle it." The designer chimed in, oblivious. "The space has great bones, but the aesthetic is very dated. We're thinking all white, walls, floors, furniture, minimalist, timeless." My heart sank. On the fireplace mantel, where our family photos had once stood, there was now a mood board titled Coastal Luxe. In place of Charles's books and our seashell collection sat fabric swatches and Pinterest printouts. "Where are my things?" I asked. Bethany smiled. "We carefully packed some of the personal items for safekeeping. Don't worry. Don't worry." The words echoed in my mind like a dismissal. That night, after they left, I opened every closet, every drawer. In the garage, 3 cardboard boxes labeled M. Delaney, Misk, sat beside a stack of painting supplies. Inside, the 40th anniversary photo, Charles's fishing hat, our album of Christmas mornings, and the 2 knitted dolls. They were tossed in like forgotten garbage. The diamond was still there, nestled inside the heart of the bride doll. My chest ached. It wasn't just the house they wanted to take. It was everything it stood for. And for the first time in years, I didn't cry. I planned. By sunrise the next day, I had packed up what little strength I had left. The kind that lives in a woman's bones when all else has betrayed her. I brewed a pot of tea and stood at my kitchen window in Providence, watching a line of birds skim across the morning sky. The city shimmered in soft gold and blush. I used to love this view. Now it felt like a distant echo of a life I no longer recognized. On my nightstand sat the beach house keys. I picked them up. That house wasn't just a property. It was where Charles and I rebuilt ourselves after cancer, where we cried on the porch swing after miscarriages and toasted each other's victories with cheap wine in mismatched glasses. That house carried our laughter in its beams, our secrets in its floorboards, and they wanted to make it Instagram ready. My phone vibrated. Andrew. About that retirement place, it really is beautiful, Mom. Private care, ocean view, full services. We just want what's best for you. The audacity, framed as kindness but soaked in calculation. My palms tightened into fists. Not this time. I called Thomas. "Hey, Grandma," he answered, his voice sleepy but warm. "Sweetheart, I need to ask you something." There was a pause. "Of course. Are you okay?" "I will be, but I need you to be honest with me. What's going on with your father?" He sighed. I wasn't supposed to say anything, but things aren't good. He's been covering up some big investment losses, took out a second mortgage. He's scared, and I think he's counting on your assets. My heart beat harder. It was a confirmation I hadn't wanted, but needed. Thank you, Thomas. That means more than you know. Later that morning, I logged into my bank account. 3 failed login attempts from an unfamiliar device. An alert I had ignored days ago, now screaming for my attention. It was no longer just about a wedding. It was about desperation dressed as love. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room surrounded by the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the occasional groan of old wood. My tea grew cold again. I stared at the dolls sitting on the table. The bride and groom, still intact, still holding secrets. I thought about Lily's face as she laughed, about Andrew's rehearsed concern, about Bethany's bright, hollow smile. Saw them all, like actors in a play I didn't audition for. Maybe that's what old age felt like. Being an extra in someone else's drama until you decided to rewrite the script. The next day, I met Judith, my oldest friend, at a quiet cafe tucked between a bookstore and an antique shop. We sat outside beneath a red umbrella, the breeze, warm and steady. I told her everything. She listened, her eyes sharp behind tortoiseshell glasses, her silver hair pinned with precision. "And the diamond?" she asked when I finished. "Still there," I said. "They didn't even look closely enough to find it." She set her fork down and leaned across the table. "Maggie, this isn't just about disrespect. This is a calculated attempt to control you. Have they asked for power of attorney yet?" 3 times since Christmas, she let out a long breath. "Thank God you've resisted. You've given them everything, your time, your home, your grace. What are they giving you in return?" The question sliced through me like glass. I blinked slowly, feeling something harden. Not anger, not even grief. Clarity. That night, I drove to the small bank where Charles and I had kept a safe deposit box for decades. I hadn't visited in years. The vault smelled like old paper and polished steel. Inside the box were the birth certificates, our wedding license, a few rare coins, and a letter from Charles, handwritten, sealed. I hadn't remembered that. I didn't open it. Not yet. I needed to finish something first. I walked out of that bank with a decision I didn't yet know how to say out loud, but I could feel it forming, a decision that would change everything. The next morning, I called Marcus Blake, an estate attorney Charles had introduced me to long ago. We hadn't spoken in over a decade. His voice on the phone carried the same calm steadiness I remembered. "Margaret?" he asked, a hint of surprise softening his usual formality. "I need your help," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. "And I need to meet you today." We met that afternoon in a quiet corner of a coffee shop near College Hill, the kind of place where students buried themselves in books and professors nursed cappuccinos between lectures. Marcus looked older, grayer beard, deeper lines, but his eyes were the same, precise and discerning. He ordered tea for both of us, just like Charles used to. I handed him the documents Thomas had given me, printouts of investment losses, mortgage, statements, even screenshots of the attempted account access. I watched his face as he read them, his brows drawing together, his mouth a tight line. "This is serious," he murmured. "Your son is financially drowning, and he's looking at you as the life raft." "I figured," I said, folding my hands around my cup. "Has he formally requested control over any of your accounts?" "He tried. Power of attorney. And lately, there's been a push for a family trust." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "That's often the prelude to transferring assets under the guise of estate planning. But once it's in their hands, Margaret, it rarely ends well for the parent." "I'm not surprised," I replied quietly. He paused, then looked at me directly. "Do you want to stop the wedding from happening at the beach house?" I hesitated. A long, slow breath escaped me. "I want to stop pretending that any of this is okay, that I'm okay with being erased." "Then you have options," he said simply. "Legal options, decisive options." For the first time in months, I felt something shift inside me. A quiet click, like a key turning in a long neglected lock. Later that evening, I returned home and found a brochure on my kitchen table. A retirement village in Vermont this time. Someone had circled a studio layout with red marker. "Perfect for Mom." It read in Bethany's handwriting. I stared at the page until my vision blurred. The next morning, Thomas called again. "Grandma, I think you should know. Dad's having dinner with your financial advisor tomorrow. Something about consolidating your assets." My blood went cold. I thanked him, hung up, and dialed Marcus. "I've made my decision," I told him. "Let's proceed with the definitive option you mentioned." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Are you certain?" I looked out the window at the soft rust of early autumn beginning to touch the trees. I'm done being a passenger in my own life. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. In my dreams, Charles sat beside me on the porch of the beach house. No words, just a nod. The kind he used to give when I made a hard choice and stood by it. The kind of nod that said, "You've got this." The next morning, I met with Jennifer Rhodes, a real estate agent known for discreet transactions. Marcus had recommended her. She arrived at my house with a leather folio and a gentle demeanor. "You're looking to sell the Cape Shore property?" she asked, her voice respectful, eyes sharp. "Yes," I replied, "and I want it done quietly." She raised an eyebrow. "Private sale?" "Private, fast, and full price." Jennifer studied me, then smiled. "I know just the couple, tech entrepreneurs from San Francisco. They're in love with the area." "Tell them yes," I said. 2 days later, she called. "They're prepared to pay the asking price, plus a $50,000 bonus if we close in 10 days. I didn't hesitate. Do it. That evening, I walked through the beach house one final time. I took only what mattered. The photo albums, Charles's old fishing rod, the knitted dolls, the small wooden box where I kept some of his ashes. I stepped outside. I ran into Lily's wedding planner. "Mrs. Delaney, we weren't expecting you." "I was just taking measurements for the reception tent." I looked her in the eye. "There won't be a wedding here." She blinked, visibly flustered. But Lily hasn't..." "She doesn't know yet." I drove back to Providence with the windows down and the wind rushing in, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Power, not the loud kind, the quiet, grounded kind that comes when you remember who you are. The calls started that night. First, a missed one from Andrew, then 2 from Lily. A series of frantic messages followed. "Grandma, Please tell me this isn't true. Mom says the house is being sold. You can't do that. We've already sent the invitations. I didn't reply. The next morning, the doorbell rang. I wasn't surprised to see Andrew on my porch, still in his running clothes, his face glistening with sweat and fury. "What the hell are you doing, Mom?" he demanded as I opened the door. I stepped aside with practiced calm. "Good morning to you too, Andrew. Would you like some coffee?" "I don't want coffee," he snapped. "I want to know what you were thinking. Selling the beach house? With a private agent? Behind our backs?" I moved slowly to the kitchen, poured myself a cup, stirred in cream. The smell of fresh coffee wrapped around us like steam in a tight space. He didn't sit. I was thinking it's time to simplify. "My life," I said, "starting with that house." Andrew's jaw clenched. "You mean the house where your granddaughter is getting married in 3 weeks? You can't do this. Deposits have been made. Guests have RSVP'd. Do you have any idea what kind of damage this causes?" I sipped my coffee, eyes steady on his. This man, who looked so much like Charles in the face, had inherited none of his humility, none of his grace. "It's my house, Andrew. I can do what I wish with it." "That's not fair," he muttered, running his hand through his thinning hair. "This is because of that party, isn't it? Because of what Lily said about the gift. She was joking, for God's sake." I stared at him for a long moment. This isn't about one comment. It's about a pattern of entitlement, disrespect, and control. You didn't even tell me about the renovations, about the planner, about the guests. You didn't ask. You decided. "That's not true," he barked. "No?" I raised an eyebrow. "Let's talk about the brochures, the power of attorney documents, the failed login attempts on my bank account. Are those not true either?" He paled. "Who told you? Does it matter?" He took a step forward, hands out, as if pleading. "Mom, I'm in trouble. The Northside development failed. I have investors threatening legal action. I'm trying to protect our family." There it was, the truth, laid bare and trembling. "How much do you need?" I asked. His shoulders slumped. "A lot." When he said the number, I didn't flinch. I just nodded. "The sale finalizes in 5 days. The money will be placed in protected accounts, and you will have no access." Andrew looked at me like I'd just stabbed him in the chest. "You're doing this to your own family?" "No," I said, rising to place my cup in the sink. "I'm doing this for myself." That afternoon, Lily arrived, still wearing yesterday's mascara. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She dropped her designer handbag on my armchair and looked at me with raw disbelief. "Logan's parents are furious. They think we're unstable. They might pull out of the wedding entirely." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said gently, her voice cracked. "Why would you do this to me?" I exhaled slowly, studying her. My granddaughter, once bright-eyed and barefoot on my porch, now stood before me like a stranger in silk. "I'm not doing this to you, Lily. I'm doing it for me. For once." Her lips quivered. "So you'd rather ruin everything?" "No, dear. I'd rather stop being used." She left in a blur of perfume and wounded pride. That evening, I lit a candle and sat at my desk. I retrieved Charles's letter from the safe deposit box and opened it with shaking hands. His handwriting was as familiar as my own. "If you're reading this, Maggie, I'm already gone. And if I know you, you're probably being too kind, too forgiving. You've always believed the best in people, even when they don't deserve it. But I want you to know something. You don't owe anyone your peace. Protect what matters. Protect yourself." Tears welled, but didn't fall. I folded the letter and placed it beside the dolls. And for the first time since Charles died, I didn't feel alone in my decisions. I felt protected. The invitation came by text. "Andrew, family dinner tomorrow, 7 p.m., our house. Important matters to discuss. No details, no pleasantries, just that tone, the one that implied decisions had already been made on my behalf. I stared at the message for a long time. My heart didn't race. It didn't tremble. It settled, quietly. Like an anchor lowering into deep water, I typed 2 words. I'll be there. Then I called Marcus. They're planning an intervention, I told him, to try to prove I'm not competent. Are you sure you want to attend? His concern was clear, protective. I need to, I replied. Running would only confirm their suspicions. The next day, I dressed with particular care, a navy wool suit tailored decades ago but still perfectly cut, a pearl necklace Charles had given me after my final round of chemotherapy, light makeup, clear eyes. No trembling hands. In the mirror, I saw the woman I had always been, only now she no longer apologized for it. Andrew's home in Eastwood felt like a showroom, too clean, too staged, too hollow. Through the window, I saw them waiting. Andrew, pacing, Bethany adjusting a cheese plate no one would touch, Lily perched on the couch with puffy eyes and crossed arms. Thomas stood apart near the bookshelves, hands in his pockets. I rang the bell. Andrew opened the door with a too-wide smile. Mom, thank you for coming. We've been so worried. I stepped inside, removing my gloves with deliberate grace. The living room was set like a courtroom. On the coffee table, retirement community brochures, business cards from elder care attorneys, and 2 blank power of attorney forms. Please, Bethany said, gesturing to a chair. Let's sit and talk, as a family. I didn't sit. We're here because we love you, she began, voice soft like tissue paper. Are you? I asked calmly, placing my purse on the chair instead. Andrew cleared his throat. Mom, your recent choices, they've been impulsive, out of character, frankly, concerning. We just want to make sure you're protected. You mean controlled? That's not fair, Lily blurted out, eyes wide. Selling the house weeks before my wedding? That's not you. It doesn't make sense. I looked at her, and then at each of them. It makes perfect sense. I'm removing myself from a place where I am not respected. Thomas lowered his eyes, trying not to smile. Andrew's voice rose. Mom, you're under a lot of stress. That affects judgment at your age. And I imagine that narrative would be very convenient for you if I didn't have medical and legal documentation confirming I am of sound mind. The room went still. Bethany stepped forward. Margaret, please. We're trying to help. No, I said, my voice steady and sharp as glass. You're trying to manage me. There's a difference. Andrew's face reddened. This is about money, isn't it? You're punishing us for needing help. I'm disappointed you didn't just ask. Bethany exhaled, exasperated. You're confused. I've never been clearer. I gathered my purse and stood tall. The house is being sold. The funds will remain under my sole control. Any further attempts to interfere with my autonomy will be documented and addressed legally. As I walked toward the door, Lily's voice cracked. But what about my wedding? I turned, meeting her eyes without blinking. What about my dignity? Silence. Total. Crushing. And yet, liberating. That night, back in my own home, I sat on the balcony, a cup of chamomile tea warming my hands. The sky over Providence was a tapestry of city lights and stars trying to outshine them. My phone buzzed, a message from Thomas. Just wanted to say, I'm proud of you, Grandma, truly. I smiled softly, the way Charles used to when watching. A bird returned to the same branch after a storm. Sometimes, dignity is louder than rage, quieter than argument. It's a kind of thunder only the soul hears. And I had finally remembered how to listen. The morning of the closing came wrapped in stillness, the kind of quiet that follows a storm, when branches have fallen and the sky is waiting for something new. I dressed in a soft gray sweater and slacks, brushed my hair slowly, and stepped. into the sunlit hallway of my condominium with the calm of a woman who had already said goodbye. At Marcus's office, I signed the final documents with a pen that felt heavier than it should. Every stroke carried the weight of 40 years of memories, sealed into paper with legal ink. The wire transfer would be complete by sunset. "Congratulations," Marcus said gently. "You've protected what needed protecting." I nodded, a deep ache spreading through my chest. It doesn't feel like a victory. He didn't try to correct me, just placed a hand on mine and said, "It feels like peace. That's rarer." As I stepped back out into the fall air, the world seemed sharper. Trees danced in their last golden coats. The wind had that metallic edge that hinted at November. The beach house was gone, but I was still here. That evening, Thomas came over for dinner. Roast chicken, just like Charles used to make. The apartment was warm, the smell of rosemary and garlic filling the space like home always should. I handed Thomas a sealed envelope across the table. He opened it and stared, mouth parting. "Slightly, Grandma, this check. It's too much." "No," I said gently. "It's what you need." He blinked fast. "For my business?" "For your future. For the one person in this family who looked at me and saw a person, not a problem." His shoulders dropped as if the weight of years had just slipped off. "Does Dad know?" "No, and it's not his to know." He nodded, pressing the envelope to his chest like it might float away. "Thank you. I won't waste this." "I know you won't." After he left, I curled up on the couch with a cup of herbal tea and the soft hush of evening filling every corner of my new home. I hadn't heard from Andrew, or Bethany, or Lily, and the silence was merciful until it wasn't. My phone lit, up with a string of missed calls, voicemails, and texts. Andrew's voicemail was clipped and formal. "Mother, we need to discuss the fallout. We can still do some damage control." Bethany's message was laced with guilt. "I hope you realize what you've done. Amber is devastated." And Lily had sent 17 messages. The last one read, "You ruined everything. My life is destroyed." I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled out the letter Charles had written and read it again, slowly, like scripture. That night, I slept in stillness. The next morning, I met a new real estate agent, a warm, sharp woman named Marlene who specialized in retirement properties for independent women. She wore sneakers with her blazer and a confident smile that said she'd seen it all. We toured 3 condominiums with big windows and light-soaked rooms. "This one has a view of the Charles River," she said, opening the balcony doors. I stepped out. The breeze carried the scent of the river and the faint hum of traffic below. I could see rowers slicing through the water like memories refusing to fade. "I'll take it," I said. That afternoon, I made the offer. That evening, it was accepted. Later, that night, there was a knock at my door. Andrew. His expression was exhausted, his posture slumped. "You're buying another property?" "I am." "You didn't think to consult me?" I didn't think I needed to. He stepped inside, rubbing his temple. "Mother, I'm trying to help." "No," I said, holding his gaze. "You're trying to control. There's a difference." He looked around the apartment, at the framed photos, the flickering candle, the quiet elegance. "You seem different." I am. He stood silent for a moment. Then finally, "The family is falling apart." "Maybe," I said softly. "Or maybe it's just finally telling the truth." He didn't reply. And I didn't ask him to. A month passed. Leaves fell like golden confetti across the sidewalks of Cambridge. My new home, perched 15 stories above the city, was filled with afternoon sun and the gentle hum of a life finally lived on my own terms. There was peace in the stillness. Not the kind that comes from everything being perfect, but the kind that follows the burning away of what no longer serves. The kind that leaves space for something new to grow. Then, one crisp morning, a message arrived. "Lily, can I come over? I found something I think belongs to you." She arrived that afternoon, her steps hesitant, her makeup minimal, her presence no longer wrapped in entitlement, but in something softer. Remorse, maybe. Or humility. She held a small paper bag in her arms like it might shatter. I was going. "Through the boxes," she said, stepping into the warmth of my living room. "And I found these." She placed the knitted dolls on the coffee table, the ones I had made, the ones she had laughed at. They were slightly crushed, a little faded, but intact. My throat tightened. "I almost threw them out," she whispered. But something told me not to. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the bride doll and turned it over gently until her nail caught on the hidden seam. Her eyes widened as she pulled out the diamond. "My God," she breathed. "It was real." "Yes," I said, "and it was always meant for you." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I don't deserve this." "Maybe not," I said softly. "But it was never about deserving. It was about love. And sometimes, love is quiet and handmade and hidden deep beneath what the world calls valuable." She set the diamond down and looked at me. "I'm in therapy now. I'm trying to understand how I became someone who couldn't see what mattered. I've been thinking about everything, about what I said to you, about what you did in response. I'm not ready to unpack it all, but I wanted to say thank you." I nodded. That was enough. Before she left, she pulled a small box from her purse. Inside was a silver pendant, reset with the same diamond, the one that had traveled through generations, across love, betrayal, and silence. "I had it made for you," she said, "because you shouldn't have to keep hiding the things that make you shine." I accepted the gift, not because it fixed everything, but because it meant she had finally begun to see. That night, I wore the pendant as I stood, on the balcony, the wind brushing against my cheek like the ghost of Charles's kiss. Lights shimmered across the river, and for the first time, the silence in my phone didn't ache, it comforted. Days later, I hosted a small gathering in my new home. Only those who saw me as I truly was were invited. Thomas and his partner, Marlene, Judith, and, to my quiet surprise, Andrew. He came alone, helped me clear the table, offered no excuses, only quiet gratitude. After dessert, Thomas raised his glass. To Grandma Margaret, who taught us that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, and that not all treasures are easy to recognize. I smiled. Across the table, Lily met my eyes and added, "And that love sometimes comes disguised as yarn." Laughter bloomed like spring after a long winter. Later that night, as I washed the last dish and returned the pendant to my collarbone, I walked to the window and whispered to the night, "I'm not a relic to be preserved. I'm a woman to be reckoned with." And for any woman listening now, if you've ever felt overlooked, discarded, or silenced, remember this: it is never too late to reclaim your worth. Never too late to speak softly and still be heard. Never too late to be the author of your own ending. Not everyone will understand your silence, but some will hear it louder than your words. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be free. And above all, you deserve to be respected. Thank you for being here. If this story touched you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember her strength. Because sometimes healing starts with a whisper and becomes a voice that never trembles again.